and welcome to this masterclass. I'm going to call it a masterclass, but it's actually probably a little bit more of a rift, a little bit more of a combobulated conversation around pricing and charging for your gifts. And this is particularly aimed at you if you are a spiritual entrepreneur, because I know that this is something that comes up an awful lot for spiritual entrepreneurs. And it's a real sticking point a lot of the time. So we're going to look at it, we're going to discuss it, we're going to have some thoughts and feelings around it, and we're going to see whether or not you can start to think a little bit differently. And I'm guessing that you can start to feel a little bit differently about charging for your gifts. And we'll go through it. We'll go through it step by step. We'll go through it stage by stage. We'll talk about it from a business perspective, mindset perspective, the spiritual entrepreneur's perspective. This isn't going to be me asking you to undertake any underhand or icky strategy or tactics. This isn't me asking you to do things that feel uncomfortable for you and that are just not kind of in your kind of ethics and integrity, and they just feel horrible. And we're not going to do any of that. We're going to look at charging and pricing for your gifts in a way that feels really good as a spiritual entrepreneur. So let's dive in. So we're here. My name is Emma Holmes and I am the founder of Rebels and Rockstars. Now, when you watch a lot of these kind of webinars, these teaching masterclasses, things like that, you often find that you get a whole lot of peacocking going on where somebody spends a whole heap of time, of your precious and valuable time, talking about themselves, talking about how wonderful they are, talking about why you should be listening to them, etc, etc, etc. I'm not going to do that, okay? I know that if I am asking you to spend half an hour of your time with me, and I ask lots of people to spend half an hour of their time with me, then that is time that I am taking away from the world. That is time that I'm taking away from the universe, and I want it to be truly valuable for you. So I work with an awful lot of heart-centered and soulful entrepreneurs. I work with a lot of spiritual entrepreneurs. And this masterclass is bringing together lots of the information and advice that I've given to one-to-one clients, that I've given to clients that I help really intensively to grow their spiritual businesses. This is taken from a whole shed load of experience from lots of different spiritual businesses. And this is something that hopefully as you scribble down your notes, you have some little epiphanies along the way, you feel like you're actually getting a little bit more control over this whole pricing and charging thing, that it's things that you can go away and implement. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to ask lots of you to come and spend time with me and take all of those hours away from the world and away from the universe and you not actually do anything with them and it not be something that's productive. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you all sorts of things about me. I'm not going to tell you loads of the kind of credibility stuff that showboats and showcases that I know what I'm talking about. If you want to find that out, then you can head over to my website. You can have a look at the About Me pages. You can see what sort of things I've done. You can read some of the success stories. I'm not going to take up your time talking about that here. You have come to talk about pricing and charging in your spiritual business. You have come to listen to information on that particular subject, and that's what I'm going to deliver for you. That's what I'm going to talk about. So let's dive in. The first thing that I want to talk about is the mindset of a spiritual entrepreneur and the heavy feelings that come with being a spiritual entrepreneur when it comes to money, when it comes to pricing, when it comes to charging, when it comes to all of that kind of stuff. And I know that for spiritual entrepreneurs, there's this feeling at times that there is this huge stigma attached to money, attached to charging, attached to pricing, attached to asking for a sale. And it's a little bit of an unfounded stigma, I think, at times. And I know that it's something that there's this unwritten expectation that if you have a particular gift, that actually when you have a gift, should you really be charging for it? And particularly when you have a gift that has the potential to heal, that has the potential to change people's lives, that has the potential to get people unstuck. And if you're charging for it and taking away that capacity from other people, then are you actually stealing from the world? And this is something that has real big kind of conflicting feelings within spiritual entrepreneurs. And I know that if we kind of go back over history and we go back over a long period of time, you would have had, your spiritual healers, you would have had your people who performed witchcraft, and you would have had people who read oracles and passed on stories of spirituality, and who taught and who preached and who really sought to make the world a better place. And way back when, it will have been something that was dealt with by way of fair exchange. And this is something that we still talk about today. So, there may have been gifts brought to the healer. There may have well been crops and harvests that were protected by people that were then distributed to include the person that had protected them. There would be people who would read cards in exchange for money, or read tea leaves in exchange for money, or however it would have come up. And there would have been an element of exchange. That exchange wouldn't necessarily have been monetary, but there would have been an exchange that had taken place. And some of that exchange would have been insofar as their status and their standing within the community. Some of that exchange would have been insofar as gifts and produce was concerned. And some of it would have been, actually looking at what they needed and making exchange in that way. The other thing that I want to talk about is the fact that lots of people charge for gifts. Lots of people have a price tag put onto their natural abilities and their natural gifts. And what I will say so often to people is, let's look at different sectors. Let's look at things that are happening outside of the spiritual space where people are charging for the gifts. But even before we go outside of the spiritual space, lots of your clergymen and religious leaders are paid for the work that they do. They are paid to spread the message that they are here to spread, and they are paid to partake in a vocation that is deeply important to them, that is deeply their soul's purpose, that is there as something good to change the world, and they are paid for doing that particular thing. Equally, let's move outside of the spiritual sector. Not easy to say, is it? But we look at things like footballers. So in the UK, footballers, soccer players, if you're outside of the UK, are very handsomely recompensed for their work. Very handsomely recompensed for their work. And on a lot of occasions, these are little boys who've had a skill, who've had a dream, who've honed that skill, who then are recompensed handsomely for something that comes reasonably naturally to them. Yes, they train. Yes, they hone that skill. But do you not do that as well? Do you not train and hone that skill? Or we can look at other sports people who have a natural aptitude or physiological makeup to do certain things. Again, yes, they train. Yes, they grow and evolve. Yes, they put the work in. But equally, do you not do that too? And then we can look at presenters, comedians. We can look at the entertainment sector generally. Again, people with skills and natural abilities who hone their skills, practice their skills, and are paid for their skills. If you get down to kind of a real essence, you can even bring in things like accountants into this mix. People who are naturally really great with numbers, and they get paid for being naturally really great with numbers. And yes, they've trained, and yes, They've learnt more rules and learnt more ways of doing things. But haven't you? Haven't you developed and evolved and got that skill in place? And continue to develop and evolve and practice and train and take care of yourself so that you are best able to share that skill with the world. So when we look at actually this unfounded stigma attached to charging, some of it is down to our own mindset and the fact that it feels uncomfortable to charge for things. It feels like we shouldn't be charging for things. It feels like there is an element of unease when it comes to charging for things. Some of the time, we fear the perception of what other people might think about us charging for our gifts and skills. We fear that we will be seen as being greedy, that we will be seen as being not as spiritual as we would want to be seen to be. We could be seen as being money grabbing. But again, is this our perception, or is it the truth of the perception that is out there? Is it actually what people would think? Is it actually what people are saying? And most of the time, it isn't. And yes, as with every profession, you will get people who want to simply make money. And you will get people who simply want things for free. So on both sides of the coin, there's an element of truth in that. But that doesn't really matter as to where you are. You know, it doesn't really matter as to what profession you're actually in. Some people will want for nothing, and some people will be more than happy to pay for your gifts and skills. And no matter how psychic you are, no matter how much you think that you can read people's minds and get inside of their heads, you can't read their minds on this one, because you have got too much of a vested interest in this one. And I think that sometimes you have to kind of take a little bit of a step back from it and become comfortable yourself with charging for what you do, with your pricing. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. And I find that a great thing for you to do is to grab a journal and to write down, you know, what is it that's causing me resistance when it comes to thinking about charging for my gifts? What is it that is that resistance factor that makes me feel so utterly uncomfortable around it? And just journal it out. And I use a toddler principle. So you know that the little toddler that comes up to you and goes, why? And you give an answer and they go, why? And you give an answer and they go, why? And you give a little bit more of an answer and they go, but why? And you do that with your journaling. So you go, I'm deeply uncomfortable with charging for my skill set. Why? First thing that comes into your mind, write that out. And then go, why? The next thing that comes into your mind, and write that out. And see actually where you get to with bringing together all of that information, and when you go all toddler on its butt, where you get to with getting to the bottom of your resistance around charging for your gifts. Because when we actually look at it in reality, and when we look at it in a little bit more of a step back and take your own emotional charge out of it, the reality is that lots of people, and probably the vast majority of people, are being paid for things that come very naturally to them. You know, when you go to school careers fairs, they're looking at your natural abilities and your natural loves and your natural desires and the things that make you you. Because if you have a profession whereby you are utterly in love with what you do, then you're going to be better at doing that work. And also, you know, it's going to be a job that you enjoy much more, and it's going to be a job that is much more wholesome for you. So, you know that you can charge for your gifts and your skills. You know that just because something comes to you naturally, you don't have to not charge for it. You don't have to do it always for free. Because in fact, if you do it for free, then what is going to happen is that you're going to be out of exchange. And you're going to make the person who is in receipt of your work equally out of exchange, regardless of whether or not they asked for that. So the really interesting thing is, when we look at exchange and when we look at fair exchange, and I'm sure that this is a principle that you've come across before, you know, when we look at an energetic exchange and, you know, pricing and charging for your gifts and skills, it's an energetic exchange. Money is energy, okay? Money doesn't have to have this big bad wolf concept attached to it. Money is an exchange, and you are looking to stay in fair exchange for what you do. If you are always giving everything away for free, then you are naturally sending messages out there to the universe that says, my time is not worth anything, my work is not worth anything, I don't need to be in exchange. And the universe pops that straight back to you. So law of attraction, law of reflection, what you put out there, you know, you're going to bring back to you. You know, people are not going to value your time because you're not valuing your time. So often I've given away things for free within my business, and you know, the majority of the time that I have given something away for free, the person hasn't actually grabbed hold of it by both hands and really, you know, put all of their all into what it is that I've given away for free. It's been kind of a going through the motions situation. I suppose the really kind of harsh way of looking at it is they don't have skin in the game, and you know, the kind of point that they're just getting whatever it is from you, they're not valuing that because they've not brought anything to the exchange party. So people don't value a lot of the things that they get for free. And yeah, I'm sure that you're sat there going, actually though, but some people do really value getting a card reading from me, or getting crystal healing from me, or me being able to give them Reiki, or whatever it might be. And that, you know, there will be some people out there that do. And I'm going to get on to how you can actually include elements of free work within your business too, so that you can make sure that you are continuing that, paying it forward and balancing that up with fair exchange. So when we look at fair exchange, you know, not only do people not value when they don't have skin in the game, or they haven't been involved in a form of energetic exchange from the transaction that they've made, and not only are you giving the message out there to the universe that your time is not worth anything, and that your effort and energy and attention and skills aren't worth anything, and no doubt the universe is going to mirror that straight back to you so that you see it, and if you don't see it, probably will slap you in the face with it, because that's kind of how the universe communicates. It goes, oi, oi, oi. Then it goes, pew, and give you a good old slap, so that you do hear what is being said. But if you can't do this for you, then also know that what you do by allowing somebody else to be out of exchange with you is that you put them into being a time thief, an energy thief. You put them without their necessarily without their intention or without their permission, you put them into a place where they are out of exchange and they're receiving without being in exchange. So there's a really interesting, I think it's a conversation with Oprah, and I'll put a link to it underneath the video. But there's a really interesting conversation with Oprah around how you make somebody else a thief. You know, if you try and continue to give from an empty vessel, is the concept on this one, that you make that person an energetic thief without them realising, without them knowing. And again, that applies equally to being in exchange from a charging and financial perspective. So you might feel guilt and greed about charging. You might feel that you will be judged as to, your motives if you are seeking financial gain. But that actually isn't the case. You are keeping people in exchange. You are making sure that there is an energetic transaction for the work that you do. And there are plenty of professions and people out there who are charging for their gifts and skills, who are making money from the stuff that comes to them naturally. And that is okay. It is okay. The world is built on people being able to use their natural skills, their natural abilities, their natural talents, which they do put time, effort, energy and attention into training into honing, into, making sure that they are the best version of themselves that they can be. And that doesn't matter whether it's the spiritual sector or whether it is a footballer. It is the same principle. And, if you look at the preaching element and the teaching element of religion even, they are being paid to do that work. So it's okay for you to charge to do that work. If the feelings continue to come up that actually it is uncomfortable to charge for the work that you do, that you shouldn't be charging for the work that you do, then my suggestion is that you grab your journal and you just write out, this makes me feel incredibly uncomfortable, why? And then write out what comes up, and then why, and then write out what comes up, and then why, and then write out what comes up, and then why, and then write out what comes up. And in the next section, we're going to talk about charging, pricing, and paying forward. Just a moment. So, most spiritual entrepreneurs undercharge for their work. That's the evidence that I've seen. And I know this because I've worked with an awful lot of them. And they tend to charge in a comfort zone. And that's okay. We're going to talk about why that's okay, but how you can evolve from there quite easily. And I think that the most important thing for you to think about when you're looking at pricing and charging and you're looking at fair exchange is the benefit that people get from the work that you do. So I think that it's really important that we know who we are selling to. I know that I absolutely value the spiritual input that I get into my business, and I pay probably more for that spiritual input than I could, because I've often seen people talk about, producing 10 card reads for $5, and, I often see this kind of really ridiculously low pricing happening out there in the sector. I also see people charging ridiculously low pricing and doing copy and paste readings and things like that, where they are, quite frankly, taking the piss. And they are taking people's money and they are literally copying and pasting the read from one person to the next person. And if you buy 2 reads with them, you get the same read. They don't even notice. And I've seen other people, getting reads and their friends getting reads and them getting exactly the same reading, except their name has been changed within that reading. And I know that there's probably that feeling that there's lots of people out there who are unethical. There's that feeling out there that's, there's lots of people cashing in on the boom that is, and the trendiness that is spirituality. But you're not one of these people. You wouldn't be here listening to me if you were one of these people who was in it for making some quick cash. If you were on the spiritual bandwagon, if you were toot toot, this is the cash cow of the moment, let's go with it. That's not you, all right? So before you start to think about, the fact that people are running here to make money out of this because it's on vogue, as my mum would say, it's totally trendy and, it's the big thing right now. And if you're in it for that, then actually you're on the wrong masterclass and you probably should shimmy off somewhere else. But you are here in order to share your message with the world. But equally, you need to know who you help and how you help them. So think about just spending a little bit of time looking at the commonality in the people that you've worked with. Now, when people in the business space talk about ideal clients, what they often talk about is you producing this ideal client avatar, and this becomes really difficult, and people get really stuck on this because they ask you to kind of produce this all singing, all dancing profile of a person that you would work with, to include, you know, how many kids they had, where they go on holiday, what type of car they drive, what type of magazines they read, what type of things they watch on the telly, and actually it gets you really stuck because you go, I don't know, and I find that there is no benefit to knowing this information in any event. So I know that my crowd all like very different things on telly. You know, some of them will sit and watch Sex in the City box sets, and some of them will watch Game of Thrones box sets. You know, some of them are going to watch Lucifer, and some of them are going to watch Bake Off. So there is a huge spectrum of different people who are spiritual entrepreneurs, you know, but I know the commonality in my audience. So I know the things that they commonly struggle with. I know that the things that they are commonly telling themselves. I know the things that are coming up for them on a regular basis that are making them feel uncomfortable or that they need help and support with. So I think that what you need to look at doing is really getting down to actually what is the commonality in my audience, what are they most often coming to me with, you know. And if you go, oh well, it's all sorts of ailments, so for example you're a healer and you say to me, oh well, there's all sorts of ailments, well, do they actually boil down to real certain things? So they might come to you with all sorts of ailments, but it's boiling down to the fact that they're all feeling really stressed, or that they are all going through life trauma, or that they are all in fear. You know, actually, if we boil it down, what is it that is causing them to seek out your help and support? And how can you make them feel? What is it that you do? And what is the result of what you do? How can you help and support them to move forward? Because that will give you a bit more of an understanding as to the impact of your work. And because I know that lots of you will go, well, you know, I can answer some questions, and I can grab my spiritual toolbox, and I can start to, you know, give them some guidance. But actually, what does that mean? What is the bottom of that? You will allow them to start to form a level of clarity, start to form a level of direction. It will get them reinvested in their future and the way forward. It will get them unstuck. Think about the actual tangible outcomes that people can get as a result of working with you, because that will make it feel much more comfortable when you come to looking at the pricing and the charging for what you do. So I talked about the fact that most spiritual entrepreneurs undercharge for the work that they do, and this is something that is absolutely normal. All right, if you are coming to me now and you are going, actually, I'm just really uncomfortable in charging, in talking about sales, in any of it, you know, it all feels really uncomfortable and icky, then I don't mind you starting by charging less than it's actually worth. And whoop, 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 that's a big kind of, you know, big red alarm, because lots of people will go to you, actually only charge what you're worth, make sure that you're charging your worth, and If you don't feel comfortable with it, and if every time you think or talk about your charging you tense up and clench, then you're not going to be able to get into the groove with your money making abilities. You're going to spend all of your time really clenched. If you go into a conversation with people and you are immediately discounting your price, or you make that conversation so uncomfortable because of your uncomfort with your charging, then you're going to set alarm bells off in your potential clients' headspace. So it is important that at the very beginning that you charge something that feels comfortable, that feels right. And I have these conversations an awful lot of the time. People go, what do you think I should charge for this? And I will always say, what does your gut say? There is no magic recipe when it comes to putting a charge together or putting a price tag onto the skills that you do. There is no magic recipe for that. Yes, I think that you need to absolutely respect your time, your training, your expertise, the you know, the years and years and years of involvement that have gone into you becoming who you are today and being able to help and support people in the way that you do today. But equally, I don't want you to be in the position where you're having massively uncomfortable conversations that are uncomfortable for you, but that are also uncomfortable for the recipient. Because if you make the recipient uncomfortable when you start to talk about your pricing and charging, alarm bells go off inside their head and they run in the opposite direction thinking, don't know, that was really uncomfortable. I don't think that they're the right person, or they don't value what they do, or it makes them, you know, feel like they need to question actually whether or not that is a good purchase. So I'd always start with, what does your gut say? And not going into fear and not going into panic and not going into overthinking it. Just sit and settle and ask yourself, what feels comfortable? Because that's the place to start. Because when you can then start charging and you can start having these conversations, whether they're written conversations on your Facebook page, whether they're conversations in real life when you're talking to people, you know, you can start having these conversations with people, that you can start to gain confidence in charging for your skill set and for the work that you do. And then equally from there, as you become more confident, you will be able to look at increasing your prices, and you will be able to look at being able to prove what you do through the feedback that you've got from the people that you've worked with. And you know, it then becomes kind of this snowball cycle of self-confidence, because you've done the work and you've done it well, people have bought that work, then they've got results, they've given you feedback, you can go out there more confidently and say, look, this is what happened for this person. It's not just me saying that my work is really good. You know, this is the results that I got for this person. And you'll be able to then connect even in an even more impactful way with the people that want to work with you. And therefore you will be able to look at your pricing structure as you continue to move forward and you continue to progress and grow. What I would say is that you can be too cheap. Okay, so when I spoke earlier about the people that give a 10 card reading for $5, I don't value that. So when you are far too cheap, actually people don't value it, and the only people that are purchasing for you are people who are either really desperate, or they're coming in to give it a punt, and the value that they place on that then becomes less significant, and therefore their outcomes are likely to be less significant because they're less invested in the work that you're doing. So yes, there is a point where you can be too cheap. So lots of you will come across people who are in dark places. Lots of you will come across people who are suffering from trauma, who are unwell, who are you know, feeling really vulnerable, who are in really dark places at times. And that kind of is part of the work that you do, but it's also important that you make sure that if those type of people aren't your ideal client, that you're not seeking to attract that client in with the words that you're using and the information that you're putting out there. But equally, you know, if you do want to continue to make sure that you have an element of giving back within your business, then this is something that you can consider. And you can consider the fact that, number one, is that, you know, pricing doesn't always have to be set in stone. You know, I have certain things that absolutely the pricing is set in stone because that's fair. It's important that I'm fair across the board. I don't do this prices up, prices down, prices up, prices down, because I hate the fact that, you know, you can go on an aeroplane or you can go on a train and you can be sat next to somebody who paid significantly less than you for the same service. So there are some things that absolutely I do price at a certain level, and that is the price. I am able to talk to people about increased payment plans if they need more time to pay, if they need, you know, a lesser input on a monthly basis to things. Absolutely, I'm open to that discussion, and I'm open to talking to people about that. I also do stuff for free. So I also look at the fact that I think that it's our obligation to send the elevator back down at times and to help and support other people to rise. And I think that I do this on a case-by-case basis. I don't have a set procedure and protocol for paying it forwards, and sometimes it is a place on a course, sometimes it is a quick phone call with somebody if they're in a bad place, sometimes it is directing people to free resources on my website. It goes back to the fact that lots of people don't value free. Okay, so if you do spend an awful lot of time, effort, energy and attention on people and they don't implement it because they didn't have skin in the game, then you can end up feeling like you have become depleted and that you gave so much to some people and in return they did nothing with it, and that can become deeply frustrating. So you can think about the ways that you can be accommodating insofar as your pricing is concerned if people are struggling, or if you really want to be able to help and support them. There will be times where the exchange isn't necessarily monetary. So, you know, you might have a skill swap. You might have a different way of achieving exchange with a particular person. You might do things for a cheaper amount for a massive amount of feedback from them. But equally, you might have some resources that are available on your website that people can get for free, and blog posts, writing, things that people can go away and consume that actually won't cost them anything. One, it allows you to pay it forward and give people the opportunity to have your help and support without it costing you massively on a time and effort and energy perspective. Because if you helped every person one-to-one, then you're going to run out of chargeable time. You know, you're going to run out of time that you could charge to help people who are willing to pay for it. But two, also that you don't put a massive amount of time and effort and energy and investment into something that, you know, people won't necessarily value. So I brought this together as a masterclass that is free. You know, it is free. There is an element of exchange here because you've provided me with your email address. So we've had an energetic exchange there. But I've done this in a way that I've recorded it once and lots of you can use it and hopefully get little light bulb moments and epiphanies from it so that you can take that forward and implement that within your business. There's also further learning. So there are Heart-Centered Selling for the Scared as a masterclass that you can get your hands on, and why you're not making money right now in your business and what you can do about it. So there are two things that you can get hold of if you want to take this learning a little bit further and learn a little bit more about pricing and charging and money and all of that kind of jazz. But you'll be able to shimmy over and grab hold of them if you do want to. The final thing that I want to include in here is that I am going to be launching my webinar. No, I'm not. I'm not going to be launching my webinar. I'm going to be launching my program Spooky School. And Spooky School is, I love the name. I adore the name. Is a business program for spiritual entrepreneurs. And it is designed specifically for spiritual entrepreneurs with their particular genre of business and their particular trials, tribulations, sticking points, and business progress in mind. This is designed for spiritual businesses. This is designed to help you to build a business that feels authentic, that feels brimming with integrity, that feels that you are absolutely doing the stuff that you were brought here to do, and you're doing it in your way. You're not throwing people down funnels. You're not trying to trick people into purchasing from you. You're building your business the right way, and the doors are opening really, really soon. So do make sure that you get on the wait list if you're interested in working with me further. It's not a huge amount of investment, you know. I'm not going to use the word it's just, but the program is split out into monthly payments, and it is something that you can absolutely get a return on investment from. And lots of the entrepreneurs that have gone through Spooky School in the past have made that money back by the little tweaks and little changes that they've implemented in their business, by becoming more aware of their gifts through the business focused lens, and being able to actually get out there and help more people as a result of the work that we've done together. And the aim for you is to help as many people as possible, to change as many worlds as you can. So if you're interested in being on the wait list, then do make sure that you get on the wait list because the doors are opening really, really soon. So the morals of the story are that lots of the pricing and charging resistance comes from you. This is not, you know, you're weak, you're vulnerable, you're stupid. This isn't anything like that. It's bloody normal, right? If you're sat there thinking, oh my God, it's just me. No. I wouldn't have recorded this if it was just you. It is one of the biggest things that come in from a spiritual business perspective. It's pricing, it's charging, it's being uncomfortable, but it's about us realigning that mindset. It's about us looking at the fact that it's okay to charge. It's about the fact that even if you start off undercharging, get comfortable with charging and pricing, because as your confidence grows, you will be able to increase that pricing. It's about the fact that you can be too cheap and people won't value what you do. It is about making sure that you're in fair exchange and that you're putting it out there to the universe, that your time, your effort, your energy and your attention is worth the energetic exchange that you're seeking, and also that you don't put the recipient of your work into unfair exchange and therefore, you know, have their vibration affected as a result of it. So go forth and charge for your worth. If you want to talk to me about anything, my doors are open. You know, you can contact me. You can email me, emma@rebelsandrockstars.com. You can shoot me over to the Facebook page and send a message to the Facebook page. I respond to them, so you know it's completely safe. You can come over there and chat to me, or you can DM me on Insta, or get a hold of me across any of the social media platforms. I'm more than happy to go through anything with you, or answer any of your questions, or talk about spooky school and whether or not it would be right for you. So I hope that's been helpful for you, and I wish you a blessed day, and I'll speak to you really soon. Bye.